Hello and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Creation of Anatomy podcast. I'm your host, Eric Valero.
And I'm your host, Sarah Holcraft.
And today we shall be reading the fourth Wednesday audience. And if you got our book, it's 142. But if you don't, figure it out.
Father Tim's weird book.
Yeah. Which was presented on September 26th, 1979. Back in the 70s. Welcome to Lent.
Yes. Starting off with a big snowstorm. Again.
Yep. Well, I don't believe we're going to get as many inches, although by the time we upload this, we will know the fate of how many inches we will get. But, yeah. Why don't you tell us about your Ash Wednesday experience?
It was a beautiful mass, and I accidentally got dust on my nose. You know how sometimes they put too much on and it falls on your nose?
Oh, yes. Well, yeah. You'll return to that.
Yeah, my nose first.
Nose first.
Yeah. And I ended up getting a little bit too lightheaded.
Oh, in Mass?
No, not during Mass, just the day.
Oh, interesting.
Because I thought that I'd be able to not eat for longer than I did.
And
I was wrong.
Yeah.
This is why they tell kids not to fast, because if us adults don't even know.
Us kids.
I mean, I don't even know when my body's telling me to eat. So if we don't know, then kids are.
Oh, there is definitely a proper way to fast. And not even in like a spiritual way, in like a biological way. Like, there are better and worse times to restrain eating throughout the day, depending on male and female, age, like weight. There's a lot of different variables.
Yeah. Well, I haven't figured mine out yet, so.
Yeah. I got made fun of a lot that day. Oh my goodness. Well, first off, I come in, it's Wednesday, so, well, it's Ash Wednesday, so, no meat.
Yeah.
And I made fish soup. So I walk in, I'm just trying to mind my own business, walking into my office. And it's a Pilates studio, so I'm walking through, and the owner goes, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's fish soup. It's Ash Wednesday, I can't have meat." And everyone's like, I'm like, wow, your face is...
Have people never had fish soup?
I don't know. It sounds like a Russian thing, to be honest. I hear it always in Dostoevsky novels. They're eating fish soup. Yeah, it's a big thing. But no, I love fish soup. It was delicious.
Yeah, why not?
But then, in between patients, I went to the Ash Wednesday service, and I come back, and I'm like the science experiments. Everyone's asking me all these questions, like, and this is kind of funny because, like, it really does identify you as Catholic.
Yeah.
Right.
Although some people don't know that.
Right. Which, I mean, I could imagine if it is your first time seeing that, it could be jarring to see somebody with a black cross on their head.
Here's the thing, though. A lot of times they don't look like a cross. It really just looks like a smudge. And people will genuinely think, like, oh, they have dirt on their face.
Oh, no. Last year, the guy that applied the cross to my forehead, he had a heavy hand. And when I tell you, it was like he did a Sharpie across my... I did not realize it, didn't shower until the next day and then I went to school, and everyone's like, "You still have your ashes on your head." I'm like, I still have my ashes on my head? So then I look at myself in the mirror.
I have pictures from my last 6 Ash Wednesdays, because my family, and by my family I mean my mom and my brothers, always send a picture of their crosses. Katie does sometimes. But I don't think I've ever seen
like a check-in if you guys are being good Catholics.
Yeah, exactly. We just want to compare crosses.
Yeah.
See what it means for our year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the tea leaves.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a predictive model. Like a Groundhog's Day situation. Very reliable.
Yeah.
Did the groundhog see his shadow?
I just assumed no.
If no, more winter.
Right. I don't even think he got out of his hole. There was a snow over him.
That is so true. I never thought about that. Punxsutawney Phil, right?
Yeah, he doesn't live in a hole.
He doesn't live in a hole. Groundhog. That's weird.
Well, you've seen the movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They just bring him out of a cage.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Every day.
Wait.
Don't
you want to tell everybody what you're doing for Lent?
What I'm doing for Lent? Oh.
Because you're gonna look a little bit different next time.
All right, don't give me that much credit. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like my Lenten sacrifice, but I'm just not.
It's my Lenten sacrifice.
It's your Lenten sacrifice. I am not shaving. I'm not cutting my hair at all until Easter. And then Easter, I'm bicking it.
What does that mean?
Bic razor, straight.
With a big razor?
It's just it's a terminology.
Oh, okay.
Like if you're saying you're bicking, you're like straight razor to the head.
Got it. Bald.
Bald.
Okay, but leaving the beard.
No, just the mustache, just the handlebar.
Oh, right.
Oh, I'm gonna look like I'm like straight out of the circus. For God, though. All right. So, you had one thing written down, right, on the.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit later on page.
Oh, okay.
144.
I had a couple things.
Yeah, let's start with yours.
All right. So I was thinking about the idea of being a deist, right? Somebody that believes that there was intelligent design to the universe, that there was a creator. I mean, I don't know, our minds have to create something. So I guess these are like the Christians that are, I guess, most divorced from practicing, if that makes sense, right? Because I guess they in some way believe that there is no interaction with the creator. I think I think one can safely say that is a true belief across deists, right? You don't really hear about a lot of people that claim to be deists anymore. I mean, I think some people maybe casually might align with that, but I don't think anyone really goes and says that they're a deist, right?
Can you spell it?
I believe it's that IEI or EI deist. No, DEIST deist.
I feel like I always read it deist.
Deist.
I don't know.
I do believe it's deist now. Now that I'm saying this, probably said it 8 times already. Wrong. I do believe it's pronounced deist. But I think the idea of a covenant and that it's not subtly implemented into the Bible. It is like hammered into people's consciousness within the Bible that the Creator makes covenants. That is, I mean, let's put it this way. If God has always been around, we're talking the point in time that humans came about is irrelevant to how long God has been around, right? And the idea that God interacts with his creations and continues to interact with his creations. And it's funny because have you heard of like the disappearing God theory, or I think it's something along those lines?
No.
Where like throughout the Bible, God seems to disappear.
Oh, like Aslan.
Yeah, I think that's the same kind of concept, right? And I think we talked about this, not on the podcast, but separately, about, for all intents and purposes, what does it mean to have God's words spoken to you, right? And maybe God isn't disappearing. Maybe it's through time we realize that what were spoken was from God, and that it's not obvious that right now what we're being told or what's being spoken to us is from God, but it does take almost like a lag for history to catch up and to realize, wow, that was God speaking to this person.
Yeah. I would also almost wonder what it would be like to read the Bible in its original translation. In that, what you're talking about reminds me of the Israelites in Egypt, and how in Exodus it literally says that God remembered his people, almost as if he forgot about them. So it's translated.
Remember those people I made?
Yeah, it's translated as remembered, which obviously he didn't forget about them. So I almost wonder what would be a more accurate translation, or even like what did it mean to be remembered by God, if it doesn't mean to go from forgotten to like reminded of, but like.
Well, I think we talked about the anthropomorphization of God, right? Even one of our commenters made a really good point, and I responded back, and I think he even responded back like, "Oh, that's interesting to ponder about that." I think he was saying that it's pretty understood that God is like us in ways except for corporeal ways, right? And I said, well, I'm not saying that I know it's true. I'm just saying it's something interesting to ponder. Like, what if it's actually also that as well? And you think of the idea of memory. Oh man, this is great because this is exactly on my second point. I don't want to go too deep onto it because I've been talking a little too much right now. But my second point I'm making that I wanted to talk about is about memory, because the idea of forgetting implies that there is an ought to remember, right? And that if you don't, that's what it means to forget, which is a limitation on God. And I think what ends up happening is you're talking about the limitations of the translation, right? But even the limitations of human perception of who God is and what he's like is like, what does it mean for God to remember? You know what I mean?
You know what? You talking about forgetting makes me think of, on the flip side, people talk about how like when we go to confession, God like forgives your sin and kind of forgets your sin. Have you heard that before? Which like doesn't
I haven't
make
heard
sense,
that.
because like God can't forget, right? But then it's like, then does he can choose to do whatever he wants,
right?
So if he wanted to forget something, then he could choose to forget it.
We went on that too. Yeah. Have you heard of? Sorry, you got more?
No, you go.
Have you heard of it's a right in certain countries. I think it's a couple Scandinavian countries have it, maybe a few in Europe. But it's called the right to be forgotten. Obviously, it's a type of right. It's not like obviously it's translations, but pretty much the category of a right to be forgotten. Vsauce made a really good video about this because the idea that if you made a mistake and you committed a crime and you learned from your crime and you did your punishment, and that you learned from your punishment, and that you are truly renewed as a person and can integrate back into society, that the idea is that a society should have a structure of forgetting about that then, right? Like, let's say that you robbed a convenience store and you went to jail for 5 years for it. Like, it shouldn't follow you around the rest of your life. And the thing is, it's tough because then you get into more serious crimes and you say, I don't know, once you start doing that, you're always that person. And it's like, are you trying to rehabilitate the person? Or are you trying to just clear the streets of anybody? Like, and I think it's a very unchristian way of looking at it.
Yeah, that actually kind of gets into my point that I wrote down.
Oh, good.
On page 144, it says, it's such a random sentence, but it says, precisely this perspective of the redemption of the body guarantees the continuity and the unity between man's hereditary state of sin and his original innocence, although within history, this innocence has been irremediably lost by him. And I wrote this question because it's something that I have wondered and prayed about a lot, is the idea of, like, can our innocence be lost? Because obviously, if you are guilty, then you are not innocent.
Mm-hmm.
But also, going on like the rehabilitation idea, if you have been forgiven and rehabilitated and you all has been reconciled, then does it mean that you have been restored to an original innocence in a sense? Or because then I think some people, they hold on to memories so much and how things have shaped them. Right. And so they almost want to argue no, I've been through too much and I've been changed too much, so I'm no longer innocent.
They're attached to it then.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't mean that you have to go through some sort of amnesia, forget your experience kind of thing. Yeah. But your experience doesn't define the rest of your life.
So this phenomenon is studied a lot within the medical community. And in any type of, in my doctoral program, this was mentioned a lot, of the concept of being married to your condition, right? And it's tough because you might say that that's due to a management of a corruption to your body, right? Your body was working fine and then it's not. And you go, how am I going to manage this? And then some people start to identify with their condition, right? Like, I'm the torn labrum person, right? And then every time you go do some torn labrum, and then everybody's like, yeah, we get it. That's the guy with the torn labrum. And you'd be surprised. And there was a really interesting study in I forget where. I think it was in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. And they just randomly gave a bunch of people MRIs and on the shoulder, right? And I can't remember exactly how many. But when I tell you, it was so many people had some labral tear. To the point where if they went to a doctor and said, I have pain here, it might even not be from the labral tear. And the doctor will say, oh, you have a labral tear. And they go, that's it. Problem solved. Figured it out. I'm the labral tear person, until they get it surgically fixed or whatever it is. But what ends up happening is that they can't forget. They can't move on. And I see people that can move on in my practice all the time. I'll have people where I always have to remind them. And if they ever watch these, they'll know exactly who they are. And they'll go, oh my goodness, I'm so broken this week. And I did this and now my knee hurts and all this. And negative. And I always tell them just okay, how's your neck pain? Oh, totally gone. How's your hip pain? Oh, totally gone. Right? How about that wrist injury you had? Oh, gone. I'm like, be appreciative that all of those are better. And the thing is, I always tell them, remember how you came to my office 5 months ago with your neck injury and how you were like, this is never going to go away. And those are the people that their ability to forget is a blessing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing, but they also have to remember that they did overcome it still.
Yeah.
Right?
That does directly apply to our spiritual life, just in how, one, we either identify to our sin so much, I'm the person who like gets angry all the time,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm the person who always falls into this sin, whatever.
Yep.
And there's like no healing there, because this is your identity now, because this is what you're telling everybody, this is what they expect from you, and then you start to believe it yourself because you are doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
But then also, like, I think on the flip side, people who do overcome their sins, they still have other sins, and they're kind of caught up, like the way your patients are, and like, I messed up in this way, and I'm a bad person in this way, and I made this mistake. And I think we don't often enough look back to like the ways that we used to sin, and the ways that in those ways, God restored our innocence.
Right. And I would say there's a prudence to memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how you're not to memory. I don't think you really can choose much about that. There's a prudence to your relationship to your memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the idea of your expectations of the future. Are you holding on to a memory for it to help you in the future, or is it going to hinder your future? Like, are you calling yourself the person with the labral tear, or do you remember overcoming the obstacles that caused you?
Right.
And I think that's prudent, right?
Yeah. This is kind of a hot topic, a hot take, but I also, me coming from like no experience or anything, but I feel weird about the fact that like in AA, people will like identify themselves like, I am an alcoholic,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's their identity.
And I'll always be one.
Yes, for the rest of their life. And it's like, I get it to the extent that
Mm-hmm.
like you never want them to think like, oh, but like I've been sober for this many years, so like I'll just have one drink, it'll be fine. Like I get it to that extent, but also I feel like what a weight to carry, to like tell yourself that all the time. Like where's the prudence there? And like, yes, you do remember overcoming this, and you do remember that this is like a place where you can fall, and so you should stay away from it.
Sure.
But also, like, you don't need to live in that shame.
I think you know when you see it, because I know two people in my life that overcame alcoholism, right? And they were such two strong men. When I tell you, very, very strong men. And my grandfather is one of them. And my grandfather had a 6-pack of his favorite beer sitting next to his workbench for all of my life, right? And he stopped drinking probably, I think, around 1989. And he wanted that there, because he wanted to know that, like, pretty much it was going to be, if you saw one missing from there, all hell broke loose, right? Like, it was not going to be good. And he went through a lot. He went through a horrible lot in his old age, even, and never went back to drinking. And I think that memory of that, of it being there, and he knew he could, was the right way to handle his memory.
Right.
But I also know another person who made it like 10 years sober and had the same thought of like, well, I've been this long and it's just something small, let me do this.
Yeah.
And then it was a slippery slope until it was back to drinking again. So we don't have all the answers, especially for addiction. It's very, very difficult to manage addiction. And I think that it's, I don't know, it's such a testament if somebody is able to overcome an addiction.
Yeah. Because not only like obviously all of the like biological aspects of it, but to your point earlier about like the way that people identify with their wounds, or Charlie or their sins, like I was even thinking about, because I've been rewatching The Chosen for Lent, and I was in the first episode. This isn't really a spoiler because it's the Bible, but in the first episode, Jesus heals Mary Magdalene from all her demons, and I think I don't feel like all the actors portray the characters the way that I would imagine. Or
there's a tremendous amount of creative liberty in it.
Yeah, which is fine. Like, obviously, my interpretation isn't the right interpretation, but I do really like the way Mary Magdalene is portrayed, and she completely, like, when he heals her, there is, like, at one point in the show where she, like, doesn't go back, but she does leave the group for a little bit, just because she's feeling confused or whatever. But for the most part, like, she just follows Jesus completely, and like there's no sense of like I don't belong here, and there's no sense of like who I was is, and even because in the show they talk about how her name while she was possessed, like people like her name was Lilith, but like her birth name was Mary, and so she was like going by Lilith the whole first episode, and then when Jesus
is that in the Bible?
The name Lilith, no.
Because Lilith is a lot of like Gnostic text type.
Maybe it's
no. I mean, like Lilith is like the supposed like first wife of Adam.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's one reason I thought it's not in the Bible. It's in like maybe like non-canonical.
Yeah.
Texts in that time.
Yeah, but it's kind of a cool addition I think they made, because then when Jesus calls her, he calls her by her name, and she's like how do you know my name, kind of thing. But it's, I think it in general, just the Bible, like the whole importance that they put on names, I think it's something that we should take to heart, and just like how, like, who are we originally at the core?
Yeah.
And how are we letting God speak to that person, and not so much identifying with all the things that we're guilty of and the things that stole our innocence, or the ways we lost our innocence, but like those are things that we can actually move on from. And sure, in some ways, like they follow us or they come up, like ultimately if God like wants to heal you completely from those things, then he can, and we can't really force that. But to believe that he can do it, I think is such an important piece to all of it. Because even, sorry, I'm just like watching The Chosen again has like been reminding me of, also because I'm reading a lot of the Old Testament, but it just it's crazy how much faith is emphasized in the Bible, and that seems like really obvious, but we must not be taking it that seriously, because I think when we pray, we don't really expect God to do things. We just kind of pray because we have to, or we pray because we don't know what else to do. But like to pray and actually believe that God will do something, and like that's when he can do something, is when we actually have faith, and when we cooperate with him, then God can work miracles and heal us and move mountains and all of that stuff. And I think so many people in the Bible, like things don't go the way they're supposed to because they don't believe in God.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's it. The entire time you were talking about that, like, I know right now, especially even the who's the actor that plays Jesus in The Chosen?
Rumi.
Yeah, he's doing a Bible study or a book study with the brothers Karamazov, right? Oh. Your mom sent us this thing.
Oh, yeah. I didn't notice him.
Yeah. At least that's what a guy from the school was actually talking about it. So I assume it's the same thing. Can't imagine there's two separate Catholic things doing the same book. But there's two elements that in the book right now. I just happen to have been reading. It's a long book. I've been reading it for the past like 2 months now, month and a half.
Did you start listening to it?
What do you mean?
The
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, okay.
But in the book, the one thing that you were saying about names is almost a shame for your original name. right? The shame for your God-given name, because now you have taken on a life, and it's almost like you want to preserve. It's almost like you hold out hope for God. I almost think by when you live a life of sin and people start referring to you as a different name, it is almost as if I can't use that name anymore if I'm going to live this sin, right? If I'm going to live out this sin and I'm going to be this different person, I don't want that, because there's a hope of redemption still. At least I think so. And there's an idea within in the book of the character Grushenka, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but her name is Agrafina, and they call her Grushenka. And it's very clear because when Mitya is speaking to different people, when he's speaking to people that don't respect her, he calls her Grushenka. But then he'll accidentally use that name Grushenka to some people that she's like very like that respect her. Madame Hokolov, I think is her name is. It's spelled two different ways depending on the translation. But he'll catch himself. He goes, I mean Agrafina Ivanovna, right? And it's almost like he has two modes of thinking about her, right? Thinking, because she is definitely that Mary Magdalene, Lilith kind of situation where, she's struggling within herself of like, I want to do the right thing. I'm also this like scoundrel type woman, right? And it's very clear that her name is she identifies with that name that people call her. I know it's like there's all these nicknames in Russian culture, right? They constantly, like Dimitri's Mitya and Alyosha, right? Alexei, right? But it's very clear that her name has that connotation to it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I find that people, when they want to change their identity in some way, they do change their name, like either for better or for worse. Like if they're drastically changing their identity and they change from like I don't know, like
Saul
Samantha
to Paul
to Sam. Oh, I was saying it in a bad way.
Oh, in a bad way.
In a bad way.
I think, but yeah, but I think it goes both ways.
It does go both ways, because then on the flip side, like sometimes I think people, they have nicknames growing up and they recognize like, okay, I'm not a kid anymore. And so they take on a name that's like, okay, don't call me Tommy anymore, like call me Thomas.
I know so many people that did that.
Yeah. And I think that like there can be that could be good or bad, because I find that sometimes people are a little bit prideful about like, oh, like I'm not a kid anymore. Or there's kind of a sense of like, I am a responsible adult and I am going to take on my responsibilities. And like, if people were to address me this way, it would be more like helpful.
It's like a mode, right? Like the thing is that like you keep calling somebody Tommy and he wants to be Thomas now. Like maybe that refreshing, that renewal of the name change allows you to forget a little bit, allows you to forget some of because like let bygones be bygones, like sometimes like, I mean, I know this, I mean, I wish I could change my name, because when I was a kid, like I definitely acted in ways I regret, I regret a lot of the things I said and the ways I was back then, right? And I know a lot of people that can't let go of that. And we can't move on, because I'd like to have people see me who I am today. And it's just very clear they always see me for who I was.
Right. Yeah. I almost feel bad that you don't change your name when you get married, because I feel like for me it's kind of like it is kind of helpful to see myself as like I was.
Yeah. That bad reputation as Miss Holcraft at St. Francis.
But there's like a sense of like being called something new, is a reminder that I am someone new.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, there is also a sense of like familiarity, because I think there are certain people who, when they go, like they change their name from this to this, they do still want certain people to call them like,
Yeah.
and people will even say like only my parents call me that, or only my friends call me that. And
Yeah.
I think that's important too. Like,
it's a circle of trust.
Yeah.
A boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting because that kind of goes into the other thing I was going to talk about, because the idea of allowing things to be forgotten, it seems to be a big theme of the whole conversation we're having today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that they use the idea of prehistoric and historical sinfulness, right? So prehistoric is the idea of prior to the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
While there still is original innocence, to the idea of that being the start of history, almost the start of memory, right? And because history is uh, a way to track in order not to forget, right? I think that's the whole quote of history. Like, you learn history because it's bound to repeat itself, right? There's a necessity to remember it. Now, let's see, on a neurological level, what would you say is the evolutionary function of memory?
It's like a test.
Man, it's crazy, because you got to think, is that, like, I think we think humans have memories, we think plenty of mammals have memories, but single-celled organisms have memories.
To survive.
Everything's to survive. That's the answer to everything.
But like, because
what specific function?
Like trial and error almost. Like you tried this and it didn't work, and if you forget that it didn't work, then you're going to try it again. You're just going
to avoid having to rely on trial and error. Exactly. Right. So it's not to have a photographic like recording of your life.
Right.
And I think people forget that, and they go, oh, like, why do I remember this and I don't remember that? Right.
Yeah.
Like, why can't I remember, like, when I was in preschool and I, like, we went on field day or something like that. But, like, why do I have this, like, really, really strong memory of some other event happening?
Yeah.
And you should always ask yourself, what did my brain feel as if I needed that for? Well, what did I need that piece of memory for? And it's interesting because it seems as if the idea of history is only relevant if there's sin, because it's how to avoid mistakes.
Right.
Right? And it's the ability to mark down what you did in reference to this sin. Right? Look at any war. Wars obviously come about from sin. Right? There is obviously something that somebody did against God's will. Make it very vague. One side and then the other side retaliated, obviously not God's will, right? And it resulted in a war. I mean, if you look at history, it's based on wars, you know?
Yeah. Although that's very like human centric almost, if that's the word. Like, versus
Anthropocentric.
why wouldn't history be for the sake of us? Like, instead of us remembering our sins, like us remembering God's mercy, which obviously go hand in hand, because he wouldn't need to be merciful if we didn't sin. But still, like, I think that there's a danger sometimes that we have in kind of, we were saying this earlier about like remembering, like we remember our sins from the past so that we remember how God like healed them or forgave them or whatever. But I feel like in general we don't spend time, whether history on like the grand scheme of the world, like world history, or like our own personal history. We don't spend time reflecting on where God is and all of that, which is hard when you're studying like actual history, because how can you, like, if it's not your own memory, how can you?
But how can it not be human-centric?
Because God's the only one who was there for it all. Like God-centric.
But it's not the point of history. I'm not trying to be like disrespectful toward any theological element of this, but history's secular. On a secular way of looking at this.
I was thinking you were going.
Look, I didn't mean to. That's what I meant by that.
Got it. Okay.
I get that gets confusing because of the idea that I was mentioning, that obviously something went against God's will. Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking about like looking at history in a theological lens. I'm looking at history in a secular lens, which it is written in, and it ought to be written in, because we don't all share the same lens. And I think we should all share a common history. And one might say it would be amazing if one day those two lenses merged, right? This is another concept in the Brothers Karamazov that they talk about early on, when the character Ivan, right, goes to the monastery. And prior to this whole meeting up in the monastery in the beginning of the book, Ivan had written this very, very like inflammatory article criticizing some council, right? But it was like, who is this guy? This guy's not even like that very well educated, but he's making this like really critical point. And it's like it created such a stir in the like the religious world of Russia at that time. So everyone knew about him. And when he came to this monastery, all the monks had known about him already. And he kind of pushing him on what he thought, as far as, and I mean, this is like where Dostoevsky was very prophetic in this, of like what it means for the church in relationship with the state, right? And each person has their different view of like, well, like I believe that the church should one day take over and no need for the state anymore. And some people say that the two should merge together. But if you think about that, is like, well, they don't seem right now, if we just mash the two together, church and state together, it doesn't work. You can't just go mandate your beliefs on everyone else, because it's apparently not. And that's where we were talking about the Overton window. We were talking about that marriage prep. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the concept is? So the Overton window is this idea that you take any policy or any opinion, and you can span it out into two extremes, right? Okay. Radical, right? And then like you keep going in as you go through the middle. And what ought to happen is that the center between the Overton window, right, there's acceptable. The Overton window is the acceptable, right? If you ask about race, right, you might say that like the most racist people in the world are going to be out here, and it's not acceptable, right? And then there's policies on that in the middle, right, for fair treatment of people by race, right? And who knows what the other side is? I'm not really too sure, but you would say that you could have some like policies that are a little more conservative, more liberal, but they fall within an Overton window, which is like what's acceptable, right? And I think what's happened in the world, and this is kind of where it comes relevant to that conversation that Ivan was having with the monks at the time, is that I feel like the Overton window has been very flipped, where policies end up being like starting to become more extreme, right? And it doesn't seem as if the consensus pulls what ought to be to the middle, because I think we've lost track of aiming at virtue, right? And I mean, Socrates warns about this, about democracies in general, is that virtue doesn't lie in consensus, right? Like you get 100 million racist people that like, you're not gonna get consensus that's virtuous, right? And it seems as if the church and the state, it's not conducive to harmony, to create some tyrannical church leadership that mandates their belief systems, their values, and their virtues onto everybody. And it'd be nice if they both just coincided, but they don't. That's I think the reason why history has to be looked at in a secular view right now, because I think what we should be aiming at is creating the uniting narrative. We don't have a uniting narrative right now, but I think I would love to have people say, you know what, my narrative, I'll subordinate my narrative, because I would like to see a uniting narrative with all of us. And that's kind of where I would love to see. I know it's almost like a faith in, and this is tough, but I think that's where the idea of like, I need to decrease for God to increase is maybe what you think is great, right, for the world, right? Maybe you just don't know yet. And maybe we should be working towards that uniting narrative, and we need to be talking to each other. And I think what'll happen when people talk to each other more and they let go and they're not as attached, if they just keep talking to each other and having honest debates, and just like have some Muslims and some Jewish people and some Christians and some atheists converse and just like let go of their attachments and just all converse, I think God will create a new narrative for all of us to join behind. And I think that's where we need to be going, which is why I feel like right now, the idea of looking at history, right? It has to be looked at with fresh eyes, right? And that's kind of my point, was about that, the idea of sin. And sin, just let's just call them mistakes. Let's just say that doing something immoral, right? If you don't believe in immorality, I'm not really sure how much conversation we can have. So I believe it's a non-starter. You got to believe in some kind of level of moral versus immoral, right? But something immoral, right? And then the idea that, can you return back to a state where that country has atoned for their immorality, and the other country has atoned for their morality, and they have been rehabilitated, and their policies are back within an acceptable range, and then you can forget about it. And then maybe we don't need history after that. And I would love to get to the point where the idea of writing down wars and war after war, right, is no longer what we write about, and we can busy our time more with creating art and something beautiful as far as literature, and as opposed to it constantly being a history and a story of every immoral act that groups of humans have done to each other.
Yeah. And it's funny because even literature is like about, it's all just war. Like historical fiction that revolves around war.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting because I wrote, like, would you remember anything without sin? Especially thinking of sin as in like the archery term, missing the mark, right? If you never miss the mark, why remember anything? Because it's not to have a recording, right?
Yeah. I mean, without sin in general, probably not, because I feel like a lot of things that, it doesn't have to be your own sin, but like memories that you have is maybe because somebody else sinned too. Like when I think back to things that I remember, it's either me sinning, or it's somebody else, like the way that they hurt me. But I don't know. I mean, people remember happy things too, and like
people remember stressful things, and stressful things can be happy. But the truth is that the way that on a neurological level, that you prioritize what's called the recall value of something, right? How strong something is to be recalled is dependent on cortisol levels, right? And your hippocampus is, people think that's the storage of memory, like that's where you store your memories in the hippocampus. That's not exactly true. But the hippocampus's function is primarily in the process of memory storage. And you store memories kind of interspersed throughout the entire brain. It's not exactly even sure where they all are. It's just more of there's a route to recall them, right? And it correlates how strong the recall value is of something depending on how much cortisol was in your bloodstream at that time, right? And it's a good metric. It's a good rule of thumb for your entire nervous system to take of memory of, if high levels of cortisol, this is probably good time to hit the record button on what's happening and really remember what's going on, because we might need to get out of this bad situation again.
Or, I mean,
or the other side, flip side, it could be happy.
Right, yeah. So, like, it doesn't have to be, like, there doesn't have to be sin involved. I think some memories, almost the opposite. I feel like there are certain things I remember where there was virtue that happened, and those things stood out to me.
That's a good point, actually. That does go against my idea. It just seemed what he was saying, but it does go against what I was saying. But I kind of agree with you, is that it's a little bleak to think that there's no need for memory in the kingdom of heaven, right? And I think you're right. I think most people focus on the negatives and they forget that. I think people always think of stress. If I say, oh, I'm really stressed out right now, no one goes, oh, are you having a lot of happy things happening to you? They always go, oh, what things you don't want in your life is in your life right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, we're getting married. It's going to be a stressful week, I'm sure, but it's going to be a happy week. But that's eustress, right? The good stress. And I'm sure to the extent that we have stress in general is to the extent that we're going to remember our wedding day.
Yeah. And going back to, like, people remembering negative things, or even, because I find that almost all memories have some sort of, like, pro and con, like happy, sad, negative, positive. And I do feel like, this is interesting, actually. I almost feel like a lot of times we do remember things because the negative stuff, which is fine, but I feel like we should redeem those memories and take time to, like, think back to them and recognize, like, what was good in them and where God was in them, and
reframe them.
Yeah, because I think that would be helpful for, like, then you might want to, like, when you look back, because I think a lot of people can look back to their childhood and either it was, like, the best time of their life and they only remember all the happy things, or it was the worst time in their life, they only remember all the, like, the bad things that happened. And
I don't think you choose that in the time of what you remember.
No, yeah, but like now as an adult, I think that people should take time to look back at their childhood and see how, like, just as anyone's life, it was a mixed bag.
It's tough to prioritize that, though, because I guess it was like about 4 or 5 years ago now, Jordan Peterson had this program called the self-authoring program, right? And it was a 3-part program, and the first part was called the past authoring program, right? And the whole idea is, like, how sure are you that you know your past, right? And your memory is so that you can make better decisions in the future. And maybe if your present is not looking good and you don't have good prospects for the future, it's because you don't have a map of where you came from. Right? So it's interesting because you're breaking things up into these, like, 6 epochs of your life, and then just, like, writing down different memories, right? And like within those things that stand out, right? Just write as much as you possibly can. So how you start, right? But what's interesting is that like when you ask when Jordan Peterson's asked about this in other interviews, he doesn't exactly follow that strict guideline, and he has this rule where there's like this 18-month window, right? Where after 18 months, if a memory or a thought of a memory from your past that's more than 18 months old evokes an emotion in you, and it kind of takes over your thoughts, and you kind of like really fixate on it, there's like a treasure waiting in that memory that you have not uncovered yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting thought of way of looking at that, because like you said, like you should look back and like when were a kid, like what do you think of your childhood? Like, do you look at it as bleak and filled with a bunch of suffering, or like where do you start with that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you start with what bubbles up from your unconscious and makes you emotional, like write it down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like write it down, because when I tell you, man, I had some memories when I was like 4 years old, because that was the beginning of the epoch, right? Remember, as early as I can remember, it was like 3 and 4 years old. These memories I was writing about, and I thought, I'm like, how much am I gonna write about this? It's gonna be like 2 sentences, and then all of a sudden, like 2 pages are written down, and I'm like, where did all that memory come from?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because once you nail it down, the visual I see is that like memories are kind of flying all over the place, right? And they kind of like have all these details that are kind of also buzzing around, kind of like an electron orbital, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a probability of them being anywhere. And then once you take one and pin it, all of a sudden those start to be easier to see, and you start pinning more and more to that spot. And all of a sudden, like more things, more details start to show themselves around that. And then all of a sudden, I would cry out of nowhere after writing about a memory I had when I was 4 years old. I'm like, where's this emotion coming from?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think this was an emotional memory.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like I'd have this like eruption of some emotion. And I'm like, whoa, like apparently I needed to write about that in order to process that.
Yeah. I feel that I have that experience. I've had that experience, but I almost imagine it more like it's funny how your brain like imagines things, because I always just imagine like nothing makes sense in my brain, so I just kind of like throw God in there, because if it doesn't make sense, then it's probably God doing something. So I'm just like, if I'm like writing down a memory and things just start coming up that I don't remember, I just kind of imagine like God like speaking those things to me as I'm writing.
Yeah, that's a good tool in order to understand your memory.
Yeah, well, sometimes, to be honest, when I'm sitting in prayer and I don't really have anything to pray about, I'll just try to remember things from my childhood, which I have a terrible memory. So
yeah. Well, you're blinking, so am I blinking?
No.
All right, so let's close on up there. Thank you again for joining us on our 23rd episode of the Creation of Anatomy podcast, and we will see you next time.
Have a happy snowstorm.
Yes, and welcome to Lent.